It caused Northern Ireland's government to collapse and the EU to start legal proceedings against the UK. But we now have a new deal with Brussels, branded the Windsor Framework. Here's what you need to know on why we're talking about Brexit again.
I believe the Windsor Framework marks a turning point for the people of Northern Ireland.
So this is all about the part of the Brexit deal that relates to Northern Ireland. Basically, when Boris Johnson signed it just over 2 years ago, it left Northern Ireland with a lot closer ties to the European Union because it's the only part of the UK that has a land border with the EU. Both sides agreed there couldn't be any checks or buildings or border posts on the island of Ireland to prevent a return to the violence of the past. Because the current deal, as it stands, basically moves the EU-UK border from Ireland and into the Irish Sea, and that means there has to be checks when goods come from Great Britain over to Northern Ireland. That causes a headache for businesses, means a lot of paperwork, and also has led to shortages in some shops. There's also concern among unionists. Those are the communities in Northern Ireland that are passionate about Northern Ireland's place in the United Kingdom. They think the deal means that Northern Ireland is being treated too differently to the rest of the UK because EU law still applies there and European courts still have a role too. There's a lot of detail that needs going through, but basically paperwork and checks will mainly be gotten rid of by a new high-tech system of red and green lanes that essentially uses data to figure out which goods are staying in Northern Ireland and don't need checks and which goods are going on to the European Union. There'll also be powers returned to here in Westminster from Brussels over tax, over VAT and over some spending. And then on the issue of EU law, there'll be much more of a role for the devolved assembly in deciding what EU laws apply in Northern Ireland, and the Prime Minister says the UK government will even have a veto. Not exactly. The UK and the EU seem very pleased. Rishi Sunak said today this was about breaking down barriers and was a new chapter in our relationship with the EU. Ursula von der Leyen as well said that this delivers on commitments to Northern Ireland and praised a historic moment. But I think the DUP and unionist communities are likely to be more concerned because Northern Ireland will still be treated differently to the rest of the United Kingdom, and it's the DUP party in Belfast that Rishi Sunak really needs the support of.
It is clear that significant progress has been secured across a number of areas, whilst also recognising that there remain key issues of concern.
Conservative Brexiteers might also be more concerned because while Rishi Sunak has got more out of Brussels than his predecessors, there are still some hard-to-swallow compromises here. Rishi Sunak says MPs will get a vote on this, so if they object and vote it down, it may never get off the paper. I think a lot depends on what the DUP does. If they're happy, that will probably reassure quite a few Tories. If everyone approves of it, then it's a case of turning something that at the moment is a legal text, something on a piece of paper, into something that works in reality. That probably means changing laws, setting up new processes and putting in place new systems to handle the new regime for taking goods from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. Providing the deal isn't held up or torn apart by politics here, it should, when it's fully implemented, mean that shortages in Northern Ireland are reduced and it's a lot easier for businesses dealing across the Irish Sea. As for the devolved assembly and government in Belfast, that hasn't sat for more than a year because the DUP are boycotting it in protest at the problems they have with the Brexit deal. If they're happy with this new arrangement and they decide to go back into power sharing, that will mean those vital democratic institutions get back up and running once again. Brexit's definitely more done than it ever has been, but this isn't the end. For a start, we don't know what the DUP or Tory MPs think, and then there's the question of implementing this all, which could throw up problems. And even if we get to the point where all of this is put into action, there could be spats further down the line when the UK or the Assembly in Belfast objects to new laws that the EU wants to implement on Northern Ireland. So this isn't the end, and these arguments aren't going anywhere soon.